Since South Africa has taken Israel to the ICJ, the media attention the case received has been among the most significant aspects. It has dominated headlines. But now that a very significant report has been released, detailing the corruption behind the case and the involvement of the Iranian regime and its non-democratic allies pursuing their own interests, the media has gone quiet. The significance of this report brings the credibility of the entire case into question. So when we heard about it, we knew that in order to understand these findings better, we needed to speak to the person in charge. Coming up is a more in-depth overview from Dr. Charles Small, the Executive Director of the Institute for the Study of Global Antisemitism and Policy. The Institute for the Study of Global Antisemitism and Policy has just published a report that hasn't gotten the media coverage it deserves. The focus is South Africa's ANC government and its dangerous alliances with Iran, Qatar, and Hamas. Today, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak with Dr. Charles Small, Executive Director of the Institute, in order to unpack the key points of the research. Welcome, Dr. Small. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. I'm honored to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's get straight into the questions. Looking forward to hearing your responses. So first question, can you summarize the key findings of the report that link South Africa's ICJ case against Israel to external pressures from Iran?
So one key point that's very important is that the ANC, the African National Congress, we know had a massive debt. They were in serious financial trouble to the point where some were questioning whether they'd be able to run effectively in the last election. And suddenly their debt was mysteriously, and it's still mysteriously, paid off. Money came in from outside sources, and the ANC has not been open and transparent where the funds came from. At the same time, the Foreign Minister Pandor, who is quite extreme, and I'm saying these words very carefully, when it comes to Israel, when it comes to siding with Islamist terrorists. She has a large following with radical people in Cape Town and other parts of South Africa. Foreign Minister Pandor went on a tour of Qatar and Iran, and soon after meeting high-level officials in the Gulf, she welcomed, just weeks later, a Hamas delegation, and the African National Congress gave them a red carpet treatment, which is unusual. And then soon after that, the African National Congress took on this international criminal court case against Israel. And of course, in terms of propaganda, when the African National Congress, the inheritors of the struggle, of the great struggle of the African National Congress of a generation ago of Nelson Mandela and Walter Sisulu and Oliver Tambo, accuses Israel of being an apartheid state, it had an impact in terms of propaganda. But what we've done in our report is unpack these unholy alliances that the ANC has now forged with radical, anti-democratic, Islamist, not Muslim, but political Islamist entities that call for the destruction of democracy, the annihilation of Israel, and the murder of Jewish people, as well as the subjugation of women and other minorities. These are values that are antithetical to democracy and antithetical to what the African National Congress stood for nearly a century. And it's a shame that for money, the current corrupt leaders have sold the soul of the struggle against apartheid to anti-democratic anti-Semites. And we have to remember, too, that the Muslim Brotherhood, Qatar, Iran, is based on an ideology that really comes out of European Nazism and European anti-Semitism, the protocols of the Elders of Zion that lay the groundwork for the Shoah, for the extermination of the Jewish people by Nazis, by racist Nazis, combined with a fusion of a perversion of Islam, is the ideological roots of the Muslim Brotherhood, of the Iranian revolutionary regime, and Qatar, which has an alliance with the Muslim Brotherhood. They represent the interests of the Muslim Brotherhood. So for the African National Congress, the descendants of people that were colonized by the Afrikaans, that were ideologically linked to racism, not just colonialism, but racism and Nazism and Nazi ideology, that this generation of African National Congress leaders are in bed with people espousing an ideology based on European anti-Semitism and Nazism is astounding. And we have to also remember Yosef Kawadawi, who was the spiritual head of the Muslim Brotherhood, always preached that the true believer, the true Muslim, according to Qatar and Iran, are obligated to complete the work of Hitler. These are the people that Pandor and the African National Congress are in bed with, and this is incredible. So they're calling Israel an apartheid state, but the ANC has sold its legacy to be in bed with people that literally call for the true believers to finish the work of Hitler. And to finish the work of Hitler was not just the extermination of the Jewish people, but the enslavement and the degradation of black people, of African people as well.
Sure, the contradictions. So in terms of almost summarizing all of that, it was almost a direct exchange where money was given to the South African government in exchange for Iranian and Qatarian interests to be paramount, to be the most important thing.
Yes, I think this is what the research shows. We also show, for example, that the PFLP provided some legal counsel to the African National Congress and to the South African delegation at the Hague. So we have Palestinians connected to the PFLP, a terror-designated organization, helping the case in the courts that we show. We also, interestingly enough, on November the 19th, just a few days ago, the United States of America sanctioned specific Hamas operatives as being terrorists and now are being sanctioned by the American government. One gentleman, his name is Bassam Naim. Bassam Naim has just been sanctioned by the American government. Bassam Naim played a key role, it's amazing, in forging relations with the African National Congress. He was really the point person, visiting South Africa many times. He was involved in the Hague's criminal case against Israel, and now he's just been sanctioned by the Biden administration. These are the type of bedfellows that the African National Congress has at the moment, which is really sad and criminal.
Sad and crystal clear as well in terms of the intentions. So almost in one or two sentences, is this the most shocking discovery, or what would you describe as the absolute most underreported detail from the report that was the biggest finding for you?
So I think the biggest finding is how the African National Congress, by accusing Israel of being an apartheid state, really that accusation resonates internationally in the human rights community, and to start unwinding the connections that South Africa, that the African National Congress and this proceeding in The Hague has with the Iranian revolutionary regime, with the Muslim Brotherhood, for money, is really, to me, shocking. As you know, I was the chairperson of the African National Congress Solidarity Committee of Canada when I was a youngster in the 1980s and 90s. I was in South Africa at times, risking my safety to stand with the people of South Africa against a racist, Nazi-inspired regime as they fought for social democracy and justice. And in my lifetime, to see the leaders of the ANC today accusing the Jewish people of apartheid when they're taking money from some of the most nefarious racists in the world is really, for me, shocking and criminal.
Absolutely. And in terms of the research, why exactly is it a game changer when it comes to trying to understand the ICJ case and South Africa's motives?
So I think the game changer to me, and I hope, is that when democratic countries understand that this is part of the war against the Jewish people and a war against democracy that is being led by the Muslim Brotherhood through Qatar and the Iranian revolutionary regime, when this starts to unravel, and we see the African National Congress and South Africa which is a very important country to the global economy and to the world. This is a country that is attempting to be a social democracy. It's a key strategic place for the West, for the United States. To see this country drift into the arms of Iran and Russia is to me a strategic threat to the democratic principles of South African society, but to the international community of democracy. And this is nothing short of using anti-Semitism not just to weaken and perhaps to destroy the state of Israel as the Muslim Brotherhood and Iran would like, but this is really a way to weaken democracies around the world. And we know that Iran and Russia are engaged in this sort of war with democratic countries as we speak. So I think this begins to put South Africa in a very interesting strategic light, and I hope that this will create awareness of the threat that this has to not only South Africa, but to democracies around the world.
Absolutely.
And I'll just say very briefly, Elie Wiesel, who is the founding president of the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, ISGAP, with me, always taught us that anti-Semitism is not a parochial problem for the Jewish people or for Israel, that once anti-Semitism, it always starts with the Jewish people, but it never ever ends with the Jewish people. And this trading in anti-Semitism is a threat to democracies and people of goodwill around the world. Because once this hatred is unleashed, it knows no boundaries, and we see that it can attack other people, minorities, national groups, women, gendered people with gendered identities. This is an affront to human decency.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing all that. If you could distill the report's message into one sentence, what would it be?
That the ICJ court case, to understand that this is part of a international attempt to weaken Israel, to move Israel away from the Western democratic societies, to isolate it, to destroy it, and then to foster anti-Semitism internationally as a way to weaken democratic societies. This is the strategic goal of the Muslim Brotherhood and Iran, and this is one chapter, one dangerous chapter in the war against democracy. I think that this report is an important read for people who care about democracy, and it shows the international war that's being waged against democracy and the Jewish people.
So what would you say to those who claim that South Africa's actions are rooted in a genuine fight against apartheid and a genuine care for human rights being abused, rather than driven by political or financial motivations?
I think they should read the report because we lay out what the motivations truly are. And I think people have to remember that if Israel is an apartheid state, as the anti-Semites claim, as the Jew haters and the Israel haters claim, if Israel is an apartheid state from a liberal human rights perspective, it would be a crime against humanity. It would be an entity that had to be dismantled. And this is the war against the Jewish people. This is the war against democracy. And this accusation is being led by the Muslim Brotherhood, the Iranian revolutionary regime, and its proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah, who claim that Israel is an illegitimate occupying entity, an apartheid entity that has to be removed. And we look on the other side of the borders with Israel. Do we see a social democracy in the neighborhood of Israel? Do we see vibrant spaces where men, women, and minorities celebrate democracy? Do we see universities developing cures for disease and furthering philosophy and social sciences? Do we see an explosion of music and art in these spaces? Or do we see societies where music is illegal, where women cannot go out in public unaccompanied by a man, where women cannot get an education? And now in places like Afghanistan and in places like Gaza, women cannot be heard speaking in public. And yet, our detractors, with the money coming from the Muslim Brotherhood and Qatar and Iran, are accusing the only democracy a vibrant society with an incredible civil society, with brilliant universities, with active freedom of expression and music and culinary, revolutions where people from different walks of life are integrated. If you walk the streets of Tel Aviv or any city in Israel, you know what kind of a vibrant, free, democratic society Israel truly is. It's an incredible experiment in human creativity and ingenuity and creation of science and technology.
Absolutely.
This is what the haters want to destroy.
Yeah.
They want to destroy the only democracy in that part of the world. And for this sort of canard of anti-Semitism to start gaining traction in some of the finest universities of the Western world and the media of record, the challenge that anti-Semitism, contemporary anti-Semitism in the West poses, not just to the Jewish people in Israel, but to the very foundational elements of democratic society. And this is the challenge that the West needs to wake up to, because this, as Elie Wiesel taught us, anti-Semitism begins with the Jews, but it doesn't end with the Jews. The anti-democratic forces are actually attacking our finest institutions in democratic countries throughout Europe and the Americas.